Welcome to NewsNation's Backscroll, where we look back at our major news coverage on the most important topics and personalities of our time.
In the Murdaugh family saga, a new twist in the cases connected to this family in South Carolina. Alec Murdaugh's surviving son, Buster, who you saw in court if you followed the case, released a statement after the family of Steven Smith raised money to exhume his body and conduct an independent autopsy. So you may be asking, what is this case? Who is Steven Smith? Well, his death in 2015 was ruled a hit and run after he was found in the middle of the road, not far from the Murdaugh's family property, Moselle, where the bodies of Maggie and Paul were found. Authorities reopened this investigation years later in 2021 after uncovering some information while investigating the deaths of Maggie and Paul. Well, a recently released documentary on Netflix suggests that Smith and Murdaugh's oldest son, Buster, may have had some sort of relationship. Well, we haven't heard from Buster until now. He is speaking out this morning, and he is releasing a statement saying, in part, these baseless rumors of my involvement with Steven and his death are false. I unequivocally deny any involvement in his death, and my heart goes out to the Smith family. I am requesting that the media immediately stop publishing these defamatory comments and rumors about me. Joining us this morning, criminal defense attorney and legal analyst Jana Spilbor. She followed the Murdaugh double murder trial with us, and now we've got this other case. Thanks for being here. You know, for those of us who know all of the different layers to this case, Steven Smith was a big part of this investigation early on. And the fact that this case got reopened, we still don't yet know what the evidence was that prompted them to take a second look at this, do we?
No, we don't. But let's take a look at what we do know. And I think we should make clear that we are not on the cusp of a Murdaugh mystery Netflix series sequel right now. What we have here is not the authorities requesting that the body of Steven Smith be exhumed and another autopsy performed. This is being done privately by Sandy Smith, Steven's mother. Now, we cannot blame Sandy for wanting to do this. She, I'm sure, tuned into the Murdaugh murder trial as well. She's had questions about whether or not her son was the victim of an accidental hit and run, or something worse. So she's basically been able to garner some sympathy and create a GoFundMe to create the funds, because this is not a cheap date. In order to exhume somebody, it's costly. To hire a private person to do a second autopsy is expensive. So she's going to go ahead and do that for her own satisfaction. What could possibly come from this? Maybe nothing. Or if there is some information that perhaps was overlooked back in 2015, Sandy Smith can bring that to the authorities, SLED, and say, look what I have here. Now what are you going to do with this new information?
So it's been 8 years, though, Jana. So does evidence get any better with time, or does it get harder and harder to try to understand truly how he may have died? What happened that day?
Right. And that's exactly why I'm feeling sorry for Sandy Smith in a sense, because evidence does not get better with time. And we do not know how badly decomposed her son's body is going to be. It may reveal absolutely nothing new. In fact, sometimes when you have a situation like this specifically, we know that there was trauma to Steven Smith's head and body. So that part is not going to change. What could possibly change is if they didn't do some toxicology testing, for example, and maybe there is enough tissue that's still intact for them to do that. But I really think that's going to lead down a road to nowhere. And let's be specific here. Really what she's looking for is to tie specifically Buster Murdaugh to the death of her son, Steven Smith. And right now, there really is nothing but speculation. We have no more information than we did back then, except for the fact that we know that the Murdaugh family reign is over. And maybe people might want to come forward with information now that they didn't want to come forward with in 2015, but that has nothing to do with the condition of the body or what they'll find in a second autopsy.
All right, how about some inside scoop in a NewsNation exclusive? It's been more than 6 weeks since Alex Murdaugh was convicted of shooting to death his wife and son. 2 consecutive life sentences in a South Carolina maximum security prison. So Murdaugh is currently in protective custody. Why? Because he's a somebody, and he's getting threats, and there's currency if you can put some marks on him. Instead, he wants to go to the general prison population. Why? His defense lawyer, who was by his side for the whole trial, recently returned from visiting him in prison. He has the inside understanding of what his life is like, why he would want this kind of precarious change, and the reality, the new reality for his remaining son, Buster. Let's please welcome back Alec's attorney, Jim Griffin. Counselor, thank you for taking the opportunity.
Happy to be here, Chris.
So help me understand the big obvious question. Why would a guy who knows he's a target want to go to a place where he can be victimized?
Well, Chris, Alec is a guy who does not want to be isolated in a cell 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In protective custody, it's not like that, but it's pretty isolated. He wants to contribute. There are a lot of things that he can do in the general population. I mean, he's a lawyer, he's a college-educated person, and there are programs where he can assist with. You know, he has heard from the prison officials that there have been threats against him. He's not received those directly. He had some threats when he was in the county jail, but he was able to navigate through that. You know, anytime you're in prison and you're a name like he is, you're going to be challenged, and he had been challenged at the county jail, but he was able to overcome and develop relationships, and he was productive in the county jail, and he think he can be productive in the general population. I mean, he would rather take his chances on the yard than rot away in a cell, to be honest with you.
Let's talk about what that says about his state of mind right now. First of all, do you think that he's got a little bit of a death wish? Yes, he's hanging out with cops and sexual predators and other people they put protective custody, but he's outside the box most of the day in their company. Do you think that he wants to get hurt?
No, absolutely not. I mean, Alec had he had, you know, the death wish, death attempt back in Labor Day of 2021, and from that day since, he has been a man who has been sober, and he has been rational, and he plans to continue. He looks forward to the day of getting out of prison. We've got an appeal pending. We're very hopeful of the appeal. He's a lawyer. He saw how things went, and so he is not someone who has given up hope. He has hope for the future. He has hope he will get out one day, and he definitely does not have a death wish.
Now, you don't dispute that Alec Murdaugh is heard on that video, nor do you dispute that makes his initial reckoning about where he was and when false. Your argument is, but he doesn't sound like a killer in it. Am I right?
Correct.
Now, why isn't the lie enough, Jim?
Well, first, I mean, the lie is clearly problematic. In and of itself, it's a lie. In and of itself, it puts him down at the kennels at 844. But in and of itself, it doesn't mean he killed them. What you have to buy into is that they were dead at 8:48 or 8:49, and that's the whole cell phone data, that if someone is found dead, you know, an hour and a half after they last used their phone, then they are dead when they stopped using their phone last. That was the state's whole time of death analysis, and we pushed back on that really hard, and that juror obviously disregarded it, and it seemed like all the other jurors disregarded it, and they were, you know, according to the one juror that you played the interview of, was more convinced that he did it because he lied about being down there. I mean, that was problematic. And the way we addressed it is put Alec on the stand, and by the time he testified, he was a lying, cheating, stealing lawyer who would steal money from his own mother and grandmother, you know, and the view of the evidence that was in front of the jury.
You know,
and
everybody
one
has...
other thing.
Go ahead, please, Jim.
When that juror said he never cried, he could not have been talking about never crying about Paul and Maggie, because he bawled the whole time on the stand. I believe, in fairness to that juror, he was talking about he never cried about stealing money from his clients. I assume that's what it's about.
Well, or even this. I mean, it's his reckoning that there weren't enough tears for him to equate it with crying. He thought it was acting. Whatever. He's entitled to his opinion, obviously. How he applies it to the facts is what's going to wind up being relevant to you. And the decision to put Murdaugh on, just to make it clear to everybody, and I've been saying this as a mediocre attorney, you work for him. So if Murdaugh says, I'm going on the stand, you could, of course, advise him. We think it's a good move. We think it's a bad move. Here's why. But at the end of the day, Mr. Murdaugh, any defendant, decides what they're going to do for themselves. Do you believe it was the wrong move to put him on the stand?
Looking back on it, actually, no. And that may surprise people. But it changed from day to day. But frankly, Chris, at the time of a point in the trial where we had to make that decision, all the bad act evidence was already before the jury. I mean, one reason, as you know, you're a lawyer, and anyone who tries cases, particularly criminal cases, one of the things you consider is what do you open the door to when you put the witness on the stand? And here, had we put him up and none of the financial crimes had been introduced in the evidence, we would have likely opened the door to introduction of the financial crimes. But that had already been done, and he was so beat up at that point. Frankly, we had to throw a Hail Mary by putting him on the stand to explain the lie, explain why he cheated, explain why he stole, and because of his drug addiction. And we had hoped that jurors had experience, whether family members or relatives, of how drug addicts lie, cheat, and steal, and that they would have understanding of that. And obviously, that did not work.
Did he think he did a good job on the stand? Did he regret taking the stand? Did he insist on going on the stand?
He wanted to testify the whole time, and it was a consultation. I'll tell you, we did not disagree with his analysis, which was this jury is going to want to hear from me, particularly because I'm a lawyer, I'm articulate, and I'm accused of killing my wife and son. And he's not wrong about that. But as a tactical matter, you have to weigh that against the jury's ability to not hold it against him if he doesn't testify. And in any event, like I said, we had all this other evidence we had to deal with that had come in under this pretense of motive, which it really wasn't. It was a character assault that worked for the state.
The father-son relationship is an unusual one, a special one. But consider just for a second what happened in a South Carolina courtroom today. A son took the stand and testified for the defense in his father's double murder trial. Prosecutors say Alex Murdaugh killed his wife and other son to cover up crimes. Today, his surviving son, Buster, told the story of that awful night.
Buster, when did you first find out that your mom and brother were murdered?
My dad called me. I can't remember the exact time, but it was later. And he called me on the phone. He asked me if I was sitting down, and I was like, yeah. And then he sounded odd, and then he told me that my mom and brother had been shot.
Robin Klasowitz, clinical psychologist that deals with traumatized families and kids, is with us now. Robin, I think even the layperson could agree the Murdaugh family, considering all that has happened with it, would be qualified as traumatized. That said, in as much as you feel for Buster, who, at least by prosecutors' accounts, has done nothing wrong here, can you account for the emotions that would go on when a son is testifying about whether or not his father is convicted of murder of his brother and mother?
I think what we saw today was the anesthesia of trauma. When we're traumatized, sometimes we don't feel our emotions. We simply he's staying in that logical mindset, trying to answer the questions and not really dealing with the emotions that he must be going through.
If you're a jury, and you know this from the flip side of talking to people who have been traumatized and going through this, if you're a jury and you're listening to a man who has lost his mother and his brother, and now potentially he's going to lose his father to life in prison. Can you believe anything he says?
I think the jury is going to have a hard time dealing with the unemotional presentation that he has. But for actual trauma survivors, that is how they talk. People in the aftermath of extreme tragedy do talk in that very logical, detached way. It's the only way the brain can make sense and can cope during this kind of pressure.
That's a good point. I think about people who I've interviewed who've lost children, or people who survived the Holocaust and other really just sort of overwhelmingly emotional events. That is how they talk, because they can't deal with it. Interestingly enough, this family's had so many issues, right? There was the boat crash in which Buster's brother was accused of being drunk and killing a young girl who he was out joyriding in this boat with. You've got the financial crimes that are alleged by the prosecution and others by Alex Murdaugh. And then also over all of this is the drug addictions that allegedly sort of fueled the bad behavior. Take a listen to Buster being asked about that.
Were you aware that your dad had a opioid addiction?
A little bit. I knew a little bit about the usage of pills.
What did you know about it?
I knew that either my brother and mom had found them at some point, and then, you know, told them like, hey, we found these. And I want to say the 2018 around Christmas, he went to a detox facility after Christmas, and that was my knowledge of it. Thought that handled it.
To a lay person who's watching that, you say, how can you be that detached, that logical, that cold when talking about this really emotional thing and looking at your father at the defense table who may be going to prison? Is that why prosecutors maybe didn't cross-examine him? Because it just sort of would have continued to look worse for them? I'm trying to figure out the logic here and how the jury would understand what you were saying as an expert, that, hey, it's more likely he's telling the truth than if he was super emotional and sobbing and carrying on.
The question is, would a layperson know that he would be that unemotional?
A stunning development tonight in the already twisted case surrounding prominent South Carolina attorney Alex Murdaugh. We have learned that more charges could be coming against him for the murder of his wife and son last summer. Correspondent Kelly Beeson is here with more. Kelly, was there any hint at all that all of this was coming today? It's quite a bombshell.
It certainly is, Brian. And if this information turns out to be true, it's a big surprise. Alex Murdaugh was the one who placed that dramatic 911 call after finding their bodies, and the investigation that followed took him from the top of the legal world in South Carolina to a jail cell, indicted on dozens of charges.
I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Okay. Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Alex Murdaugh telling a 911 operator last June that he had just found 52-year-old Margaret Murdaugh and their younger son, 22-year-old Paul Murdaugh, brutally murdered at their remote hunting cabin. At the time, 22-year-old Paul Murdaugh was facing charges in connection with a 2019 boating accident that left 19-year-old Mallory Beach dead, leading some to question if the murders were a form of vigilante justice. Now, Murdaugh's attorney has confirmed to NewsNation the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division has advised the family that they intend to seek murder indictments against Murdaugh from a grand jury later this week. The move a surprise to many watching the case.
We don't have a confession or admission that we are aware of by Alex. So this would have to be some physical evidence, maybe gun ownership records to establish that he owns these weapons. It could be fingerprints on the shell casings.
3 months after the murders, Murdaugh called 911 again.
I got a flat tire, and I stopped, and somebody stopped to help me. And when I turned my back, they tried to shoot me.
Investigators say he later admitted to arranging for this man, a friend and Murdaugh's alleged drug dealer, to kill him so his older son Buster could get the $10 million insurance payout. Soon, the investigation unraveled a tangled knot of alleged corruption, insurance fraud, and addiction. Murdaugh landed in jail, accused of relying on his prestige and reputation as a lawyer to divert insurance payouts to his own personal accounts, to the tune of $8.5 million. Still, the motive for the murders remains unclear.
So possibly life insurance. They also may have known something that he didn't want coming to light about these other crimes.
And authorities say the investigation into the murders is still ongoing. They're not releasing any additional information at this time, Brian.
Few people fall from grace as hard as Alex Murdaugh. The ultra-wealthy scion of an old money family in South Carolina had cash and connections to burn. His father and his grandpappy, they were top prosecutors in that state for almost a century. And that's why Murdaugh became a lawyer and joined the family law practice. But it is awfully ironic that a family dynasty that locked up so many felons ended up with one of their own locked up for life. When Murdaugh's 52-year-old wife, Maggie, and their younger son, Paul, were found shot to death at their home in June of 2021, cops were baffled, and high society was rocked. Murdaugh denied any involvement, but a series of bizarre events soon showed that Alex Murdaugh had secrets, and secret crimes, going back more than a decade. Soon he was charged with dozens of counts of financial fraud. Prosecutors said he stole about $8.5 million from clients and associates and businesses, and he was promptly disbarred. And just days later, on July 14th, 2022, after a year-long investigation, he put on a yellow jumpsuit. He was indicted in the grisly deaths of his wife and his second-born son. The trial was dubbed South Carolina's trial of the century, and the media attention was epic. Prosecutors hammered his ever-changing testimony, but Murdaugh blamed it on paranoia and pain pills. And when asked to describe the crime scene, he broke down on the stand. Prosecutors were not moved by that because they had a smoking gun, a video from his dead son's phone showing him casually strolling with his family down by the dog kennels where they would be dead within minutes. And metadata from his wife's cell phone showed Maggie's phone was moving even after she died. I spoke to a digital forensics expert about just how damning that evidence was. His name is Jake Green, and he's the technical lead in forensics at Invista. Here's our conversation. Okay, Jake, so I want to think of all the different reasons that could be innocuous and innocent as to why Maggie is likely dead and her phone has a life of its own. Tell me.
There's not really any. That phone is moving because somebody is physically moving it around. All the gyroscopes and pieces within this device that record it, those are moving because someone's actually holding that phone and moving around with it. So there's not really anything innocuous that we could say, oh, well, it might have just mistakenly recorded it. No, this is something that was actually recording at the time somebody was moving.
So the one thing, I mean, everybody wants to say, aha, this is a Perry Mason moment. It's impossible to tell whose hand it is in. It's impossible to tell who's flipping it around, wondering whether, you know, it'll show something in portrait or in landscape. What's the next best thing to try to figure that out?
Really the activity in and around. So looking at the databases, and I saw a copy of a report that you guys used as an infographic. They used a piece of software that automates the review of the database that all this is coming from. That piece of software does an excellent job, but at the same time, a manual review of the actual data itself of that database is going to give us much more than what that piece of software can give us. So there can be other things that can show us not only was the phone in portrait versus landscape, and you showed off your kids, I'll show off my awesome wife. It'll show us when was the last time this phone was unlocked. Was it unlocked with a pin? Did somebody unlock it with their face? What was the brightness? What was the backlight? So even if my phone right now is off and it's on a black screen, if I pick it up and it's called raise to awake. So if you black screen, raise it, your screen comes back on. That setting is going to be within that database as well. So it may not be something that was pulled out by the automated software, but that database can definitely hold that piece of evidence. So in and around and what happened and estimating steps, could this person have taken that same number of steps to make it back to the house? That movement had to have occurred somewhere. So trying to place other pieces of evidence, as well as the physical evidence of DNA and fingerprints on the device as well. And that's how you would put that phone in somebody's hand.
So the 59 steps, like Maggie's phone walked 59 steps after she's dead at 8:53, just minutes after she's dead. And I decided, okay, is 59 steps back to the house, or, it's not. The kennel is a long way away from the house. And I did 59 steps today just to see, how far I get. I got around my house once. It's not very far. Is there anything that could, be wrong? I always wonder if my step count is right. Is the iPhone really picking up every step, or could it be in a truck? Or, could there be errors? How accurate is this? I'm trying to think of what would someone be doing around a dead body for 59 steps. It's not very far.
Yeah. So the things that we've seen in testing and research that other folks have done is there can absolutely be flaws. There's no known accuracy for, are those steps accurate within 5-10 steps? I would be more concerned with the estimated distance, as that is something that is measured with GPS within the location data within that device. So I would trust the distance more than I would trust the actual the step counts.
Okay, well, that's interesting, but I do have this list I want to show you. I thought this was pretty damning, actually. It's Alex Murdaugh's steps, and there are so many of them, and it seems really frantic. It starts at 6:42, and it goes right through almost every 10 minutes or so. 6:42, 6:52, 7:03, 7:15, 7:28, 7:55. 8:05, 9:02, and they're like giant steps at times, like 283 steps, 270 steps, again 283 steps, 167 steps. They're all over the map from 6:42 to 8:05. But he also says he took a nap, and I don't know. That's kind of impossible, isn't it? That's not the kind of mistake where you could say, well, the iPhone's not always accurate. That doesn't show that he's napping.
Right. So keep in mind that the windows that we see within movements, those are typically the first indication of movement and the last indication of movement. So it's not saying that you took 183 steps within that 10 minutes. It's just that within that 10 minutes, it detected movement and it estimates it. So you could have taken those steps in the first 5 minutes, the first 4 minutes. You could have run for the first minute. So that's just the way the phone records these items. So I think the other important thing to keep in mind is that investigators properly preserve this phone and were able to pull out these databases because they were able to get them within 30 days. So this database rolls over, it's constantly. So the reason we ask about, well, what about Mr. Murdaugh's phone? What was his screen doing at the time? They may not have arrested him for 30 days or may not have seized his phone within 30 days. So that's why his data is different from what was found on the wife's phone.
Alex Murdaugh was found guilty after just 3 hours of deliberations, and the very next day was hit with 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.